People tell us every week that our information has helped save their life. If you agree that this is helpful information, please like, share, and most of all, subscribe, because nothing makes a channel like subscriptions. Somebody asked about this, TRE, time restricted eating, and IF, intermittent fasting, and they said, well, they're the same thing, right? You know what? If you did a Venn diagram, there would certainly be a significant chunk of overlap. And when most people say, oh, I'm doing intermittent fasting, they mean they're basically skipping breakfast. And as we'll see a little bit later, skipping breakfast is not the right one to skip. Now, at least from a science perspective. A social perspective is a very different thing. When I'm doing intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating myself, that tends to be the one that I do. I don't do that often anymore. I've done it quite a bit in past years. It's just because dinner is such a social time. It's such a time usually to be with family. So it's a little bit more difficult to do time-restricted eating where you're not eating dinner. Now, you have a lot of folks, a lot of families are husband and wife retirees. And for those folks, that works very, very well. But anyhow, let's go back. I learned a little bit reviewing these articles and this deck, Jesus. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the difference between IF and time-restricted eating?
Yeah, so it's exactly as you mentioned. Sometimes we use both terms like if they are exactly the same and they have been used distinctly, but there are a couple of differences that we need to mention so you can identify in which one are you right now if you are doing any of this. So intermittent fasting involves patterns with extended periods that can go from 16 hours to 48 hours. And this is a common question. What is the minimum amount of hours that I need to do to start getting into ketosis? And of course, it depends on everyone. Everyone is different, but the standard on scientific journals is from 16 to 18 hours. And this amount of time, you go with little to no energy intake with intervening periods of intake, which is basically low carb that you can get in or just tea or just water, depending on how you're doing it. There are examples like alternate day fasting, fasting for 2 days, and periodic fasting, or going to 2 to 21 or more days, which is called prolonged fasting that Dr. Brewer has covered in the past in other videos. So it depends on what you're looking for, but the main distinction with intermittent fasting is that we are talking about prolonged periods of it. And when you talk about time-restricted eating, it refers to eating patterns in which energy intake is restricted to a specific time window, which can go from 8 hours to 10 hours or even less. Some folks that only eat once a day, one meal a day within 4 hours every day, and that can be early or midday or even late day, depending. That's where the overlap comes, because if you are doing from 24 hours, you are doing 16 to 18 hour fast and then eating on one window, it's basically the same thing as time-restricted eating if you're eating at the same time one meal a day. But if you're doing more time of fasting, that goes more into the category of intermittent fasting.